This is the Hollyland Mars 400S. Now I know there are a lot of videos out there about this system, but I wanted to do something a little bit more than just read out the tech spec and do a range test. I think there are a few things that might sound great on the surface, but maybe aren't as good as you might think when you actually start using it. So why don't we start by taking a close look at the hardware.
There's really nothing to complain about with the build quality. They're made out of metal, they feel solid, and I would definitely trust them to last a very long time. Both the transmitter and the receiver look exactly the same, so make sure to check before you use them. It says it right there and right here. So let's have a quick look around. You have your USB Type-C here, which you can use to update the firmware in the future. I will talk a bit more about this later. You have your HDMI and SDI in, because this is the transmitter. On the bottom here, you have the Q20 mount. There's your DC in if you want to power it externally, and on-off switch. On the back, you have a standard NPF battery mount with a button release and a QR code if you want to connect your app, which I'll talk about in just a bit. There's a vent up here. They do have a fan. It's not very loud, but definitely something to keep in mind, so don't have it right next to your mic. Up here, you have your two antennas. They're both removable to save space when traveling. In case any of them break or you lose them, Hollyland do supply one spare, which is nice. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown, I can't do a range test, but from what I've seen, the 400 feet or 120 meter range is definitely accurate. If you don't have anything in your way, you can probably even get more. I do want to make a separate video seeing just how far we can push it with a bigger antenna. So once this whole lockdown madness is over, check back in to see how that goes. I think it should be really interesting.
The setup experience with these is amazing. You just connect them up, you turn them on, and you get a signal. I've had wireless transmitters and receivers before where the setup was a bit finicky, there was a lot of troubleshooting, wasted a lot of time on the day. This is really not something you're going to experience with these, they just work. When it comes to mounting options, they both come with standard Q20 mounts at the bottom, which obviously gives you a lot of mounting flexibility with magic arms. In the box, you also get a cold shoe adapter and a 90-degree bracket which moves the cold shoe to the front. And it's fine, I'm glad they included it. It gives you different mounting options, but it's definitely not the perfect solution. Firstly, the screw that it comes with isn't attached to the bracket like you might see on a tripod plate, which means I can definitely see myself losing it pretty quickly. But my biggest problem with it is that when it's mounted with a cold shoe, you don't really have good access to the buttons and the menu. They made the cold shoe adapter quite high, so there is a bit of a gap between where you mounted it and the actual screen and buttons, but it's just not great. Now I get why they did it. If they did it any other way, you wouldn't really have access to the battery, it would be awkward. It's basically the only way to do it. Ideally, they would include a swivel bracket. That way, if you want access to the menu and the buttons, you can swivel it up, do whatever you need to do, and then swivel it back down to get it out of the way. I imagine that would be way too expensive to include in the box, so the mount that they include is quite a good compromise, but they only give you one, and that really limits your mounting options. I really don't think it would have been that much more expensive to include two of them in the box, especially since I can't find them for sale anywhere in the UK.
Right, let's turn it on and just have a quick look through the menu. The menu is pretty simple. If you want to change your channel, just use one of these to go up and one of these to go down, and then select it. And then the receiver should pick that up automatically in just a sec. There you go. You can also do the same from the receiver. So if I want to change the channel here, there we go, and now that's found it. The menu system is somewhere where these two are a little bit different. What's a little bit strange is that the transmitter and receiver don't let you change the same settings. So you can change your scene mode on the transmitter. I'll talk about the scene mode in more detail in just a sec. And you can do a channel scan on the receiver. The channel scan will take a look at all the 8 frequencies available and tell you which one's best to use and which ones maybe have a lot of interference. I haven't had any problems with this yet, but it's definitely a great feature to have, and I'm sure will come in useful when you're actually using it out in the field.
Let's talk about latency. Hollyland claim a 0.1 second latency, which is kind of true. I wanted to see what that looks like myself and test the numbers and everything, so I set up a quick test. I had my FS7 set up looking at an Aperture MX Lite, which I could control on and off with my phone. I then set up my small HD screen right next to the Sony one and filmed both of them and the light with my A7 III. That way you can see the relative delay between when the light turns on, when you can see it on the Sony screen, and when it shows up on the Smart HD. Filming at 100 FPS means that every frame is 10 milliseconds. So if what Hollyland says is true, we should see a delay of 10 frames. The Sony monitor was always the fastest. It was about 8 to 10 frames latency between when the light turned on or off and when you could actually see it on the screen. Now, if you had a monitor plugged straight in, that's an extra 2 to 5 frames depending on if you're in 25p or 50p. When using the 400S, you get about 10 frames of latency on top of what you'd get if you plugged straight into the camera. So that's where the 0.1 second latency comes in. Now that might not sound like much, but if you have a look at the footage, you can clearly see the difference between when the light turns on, when you can see it on the Sony screen, and then when you can see it on the Smart HD that's connected up to the 400S. So what does that mean for you? Well, if you were planning to buy this as a focus puller or as a camera operator for a focus puller, I just can't recommend it. When you're focus pulling, you need to be quick and precise, and you just can't do that with the amount of delay that you get from this system. One of the things that Hollyland advertises with the 400S are the scene modes. You can choose between the image mode, a balance mode, and a speed mode. They claim that changing between image mode and speed mode is the difference between image quality and latency. Personally, when I tested it, I found no difference. I can't go outside, so I can't test it over a big distance, but I did unscrew a couple of the antennas, so then reduced the amount of signal, and the difference was just not there. Just to make sure that I was seeing it right, I plugged it into a 40-inch TV just so I can see more details, and then switched between image mode and speed mode on a moving clip, and I found zero difference. I don't know why they would include it if it didn't actually do anything, but from my tests and my results and my experience, there's no difference at all. There's one feature which I think will be the reason why a lot of you are looking to buy the 400S, and that's the iOS and Android app support, which means that as well as connecting the receiver, you can also use a tablet or a phone as a wireless monitor. The way it's meant to work is that you download the HoloView app, you scan a little QR code on the transmitter, and you get the signal. By my experience, that's never worked so easily. I've always had to go into the Wi-Fi settings, then type in the password, then go back into the app, connect, and then it will show me the image. So when I first saw this feature, I thought, well, that'd be great. I get on set and then I can get my client to just get an app and connect to my camera and they can see what's going on. I don't need to worry about it. It'll be super easy. But now that I've had a chance to use it, I don't think I would actually do it when filming. Firstly, the app asks for permissions that maybe my client won't be comfortable with, and then that puts them in an awkward position. And because the setup isn't as easy, I feel like I would have to troubleshoot throughout the day. Maybe the client will leave the app because they need to send an email or a message, and then when they go back in, they can't connect, and then I'll need to come in and do the whole thing again. And I feel like it might just waste a bit of time and just be more frustrating than anything else.
As well as giving you a preview, the app does have a few features that you'd expect from a professional monitor, but from what I've seen, they're mostly pretty useless. The only ones that might be useful at all are the waveforms, maybe the histogram, and the zebras. The focus peaking just doesn't really work for me. Frame, you can't really change it, it's just this. Magnifying, it does work, but because of the compression that you get, it's really hard to tell what's in focus and what's not when you magnify. The false color on a compressed image really doesn't give you a great result, so I would definitely stay away from them. The monocolor feature just makes everything red. I really don't see the point. And a 3D LUT is terrible. There's no way of inputting your own LUT, and if you put it on, it just destroys your image. So I would never recommend using it through the app or even with the receiver with a better monitor. So definitely always output a preview LUT from the camera unless you don't mind seeing log. You can also take a screenshot or do a recording, which is a great way to share what you filmed with someone who maybe couldn't make it to set that day. Also, if you connect your receiver to your laptop, you can extend your desktop, which means that you can use a phone or tablet as a secondary display. Now, this is definitely not something you'd be using a lot, but if you do ever need it on the rare occasion, it is there and you can do it.
So the app experience isn't exactly what I imagined before I started using it, but there are still plenty of examples where I think it's really great. If you want to have a screen for your client or a director's monitor, instead of bringing along a huge screen, you can bring along a tablet and set it up on a light stand. That way you have a dedicated device that you know works, you can set up and leave it to do its thing, and your director or client have a way of seeing what's going on. Or if you're in a production where you have a gaffer, they can download the app, connect to the transmitter, and they have their own monitor. Same with any other crew member. If they have a few minutes to connect to the transmitter and they don't mind doing it themselves, then I think it's a great way for everyone to see what's going on in the camera. So even though it might not be what I originally thought it would, it's still a great feature that I think has loads of use cases. Let's talk about power. I like to keep my rigs quite lightweight, so I use these MPF 550s. They're light and I just have loads of them. One of these will last you about 2.5 hours, which means quite a lot of battery swapping throughout the day. So is there a way of powering them externally? Well, yes, but unfortunately you can't use the USB-C port. The only way to do it is through DTAP, and one of the DTAP cables will set you back over £70. I know DTAP cables are always quite expensive, so I feel like using the USB port would have been quite a good solution. I'm just disappointed that it's not there. There's also no battery indicator. All you get is a battery warning when it's about to die, so there's no way to monitor the battery throughout the day. So overall, although there are some things that maybe don't work as I expected them to, and there are some things I wish would have been done better, I still think it's a great piece of kit, especially for the price. I think as long as you understand where its strengths are and where its limits are, you can definitely get a lot out of it, and it's a great piece of kit to have in your bag on set. It will definitely come in handy on tons of shoots. I can also think of a more unusual way of using it. I will probably be making a completely separate video about that setup, so subscribe if you want to see that. Anyway, that's it for my review. Thanks for watching. I really hope that I helped some of you make the decision or understand what it's actually to use versus kind of just reading the spec sheet. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. This is my first YouTube video, so if you did like it, do hit the like button. Maybe let me know in the comments if there was something that you liked or didn't like. I am also planning on making more of these, so if you do want to see those, do subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.